A brutal snowstorm had turned the roads outside Chicago into sheets of ice when Emma Carter began walking toward the Whitmore estate for her first day as a maid. Her shoes were already soaked, her hands were numb, and the last bus to Lake Forest was only minutes away. If she arrived late, she would lose the job before she had even touched a broom. Then she heard a man shouting, "Get away from my stand, you useless old beggar!" An elderly man stood beside a fruit cart, searching his empty pockets while strangers watched in silence. The vendor ripped a small bag of apples from his hands and shoved him backward into the snow. Emma looked at the approaching bus. That job was her only chance to escape a family that took every dollar she earned. She should have kept walking. Instead, she stepped between the old man and the vendor.
He lost his wallet. That doesn't give you the right to humiliate him.
The vendor laughed at her faded maid's uniform.
Then you pay for him.
Emma opened her purse and handed over the last money she had. She bought the apples, called a taxi for the old man, and watched her bus disappear down the road without her. What Emma did not know was that the man she had just rescued was Richard Whitmore, the father of the billionaire whose mansion she was supposed to clean. And when Emma finally reached the estate 30 minutes late, frozen and exhausted, the head housekeeper did not ask why. She fired Emma at the front door. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and stay with this story, because the poorest woman at that gate was carrying a secret worth more than the entire Whitmore fortune. Emma Carter was 26, white, hardworking, and nearly invisible to everyone around her. But the old man standing behind that door recognized her immediately, and his son, billionaire Ethan Whitmore, was about to accuse her of helping his father for money. The front doors opened before Emma could take another step away. Richard Whitmore stood beneath the warm light of the entrance hall, wearing a charcoal coat that looked nothing like the worn jacket he had worn near the fruit stand. Behind him rose a marble staircase and a hallway larger than Emma's apartment. "That is the young woman," Richard said. "She is the reason I made it home safely." The head housekeeper, Margaret Hale, stiffened. Only seconds earlier, she had told Emma that lateness was unacceptable and that the Whitmore family did not employ unreliable people. Emma lowered her eyes, embarrassed by her wet uniform and muddy shoes. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't know who you were." Richard smiled. "That is exactly why what you did mattered." A tall man in a dark suit appeared beside him. Ethan Whitmore looked younger than he did in business magazines, but far less approachable. His gray eyes moved over Emma, as if she were a problem that had arrived at his door. "You were the woman with my father?" he asked. "Yes." "How did you know where he lived?" "I didn't." "You expect me to believe you spent your last money on a stranger, missed your bus, and happened to be reporting for work at his house?" The accusation struck harder than Emma expected. She had walked through the snow believing that helping Richard had cost her the only job she could find. "I didn't know this was his house until I reached the gate," she said. "And I didn't help him because I wanted something." "People usually want something," Ethan replied. Richard turned toward his son. "Not everyone sees the world the way you do." Margaret reminded them that estate policy required the dismissal of any new employee arriving more than 15 minutes late. Richard did not raise his voice, but the room fell silent. "Then change the policy when the delay is caused by protecting a man old enough to be your father." Emma was allowed inside. Margaret led her through the service corridor and showed her the staff wing. The warmth made Emma's frozen fingers ache as feeling returned. She was given dry shoes, a clean blue uniform, and a narrow room reserved for overnight shifts. "You were given a second chance because Mr. Richard insisted," Margaret said. "Do not confuse that with special treatment." "I won't. You will clean the East Wing, prepare Mr. Richard's sitting room each morning, and help wherever needed. You will not enter private offices or ask questions about the family." Emma nodded. Strict rules were easier to survive than the chaos at home, where Diane changed her demands without warning, and Tyler could lose a month's rent in one night. Her first assignment was the library. The room held floor-to-ceiling shelves, leather chairs, and windows overlooking a frozen lake. Emma worked carefully around the photographs on Richard's desk. One showed Ethan as a boy beside a smiling girl with pale hair and a missing front tooth. The silver frame carried one name, Amelia. Emma left it untouched. Near noon, Richard entered with a cane he had not used at the market. He thanked her again and offered to repay every dollar she had spent. Emma refused. "You need the money," he said gently. "I do. But if I take it now, it will feel as though I helped you because there was a reward." Richard studied her. "You have a strange kind of pride. It's one of the few things no one has managed to take from me." The answer seemed to trouble him. Before he could ask what she meant, Margaret arrived and sent Emma to the dining room. The rest of the day passed without rest. Emma polished silver, carried laundry, cleaned guest rooms, and helped an older maid lift a heavy tray after her own shift should have ended. She also noticed that the staff lowered their voices whenever Ethan entered a room. Late that afternoon, Emma found him alone in the study. She had entered only to clear the fireplace, but Ethan immediately closed the report in front of him. "My father trusts too easily," he said. "That sounds like something you should discuss with him. He thinks you are different. He met me for 10 minutes, and you made sure those 10 minutes were memorable." Emma tightened her grip on the ash bucket. "Your father was being humiliated. I stopped it. You can watch me as closely as you like, but I came here to work, Mr. Whitmore. Nothing more." For a moment, surprise crossed Ethan's face. Most people softened their voices around him. Emma did not. She finished cleaning the fireplace and left without waiting for permission. That evening, Richard watched from the upstairs landing as Emma helped the kitchen staff carry boxes after her shift had ended. Ethan stood nearby, equally silent. "She did not know who I was," Richard said. "So she says." Richard looked at his son with disappointment. "You have spent 15 years searching for one good person from your past. Perhaps you should learn to recognize one standing in front of you." Ethan said nothing. Downstairs, Emma's phone vibrated. A message from Tyler appeared across the screen. "Bring home your first paycheck. Harold is coming tomorrow. Mom says you will listen this time." Emma quickly locked the phone, unaware that Richard had noticed the fear on her face. She had survived her first day at Whitmore Estate, but the family she was trying to escape had already found a way to follow her inside. The message on Emma's phone disappeared when the screen went dark, but the threat behind it followed her through every room of the Whitmore estate. She finished carrying the last boxes into the pantry and told herself that Tyler was only trying to frighten her. He often made demands he could not enforce. Harold Brooks might have money, but he could not force her to marry him. At least, that was what Emma needed to believe. When her shift ended, Margaret handed her a printed schedule. "You will report at 6 tomorrow morning," the head housekeeper said. "Mr. Richard takes breakfast in his private sitting room at 7. He prefers his tea without sugar, and his medication must be placed beside the cup." Emma studied the list carefully. "I understand." Margaret glanced at Emma's wet coat. "There is a staff room available tonight. The roads are still dangerous." Emma hesitated. Going home meant facing Diane, Tyler, and possibly Harold. Staying at the estate would only delay the confrontation, but for one night, delay felt like mercy. "I'll stay," she said. The staff room was small, with a narrow bed and one window facing the frozen gardens. To Emma, it felt safer than any place she had slept in months. No one shouted through the walls. No one searched her purse for money. No one told her that Tyler's mistakes were her responsibility. She placed her phone face down and tried to sleep. At midnight, Diane called. Emma ignored it. A second call came from Tyler. Then a message appeared. "Harold paid part of my debt. Mom told him you agreed." Emma sat upright. She immediately called Diane. "What did you tell him?" Her mother's voice was calm, almost bored. "I told Harold you would come home tomorrow. I never agreed to marry him. You don't need to love him. He has a house, a business, and enough money to solve our problems. They are Tyler's problems. He is your brother. He is 27 years old. He can work." Diane's voice hardened. "After everything this family has done for you, this is how you repay us?" Emma closed her eyes. Diane used the same words whenever she wanted obedience. She spoke as though feeding a frightened 11-year-old girl had purchased Emma's entire future. "I'm not marrying Harold. You will do what is necessary." The call ended. Emma stared at the silent phone. For years, she had worked longer hours, skipped meals, and abandoned opportunities. Because Diane said the family needed her, nothing had improved. Tyler only gambled more because someone always rescued him. This time, Emma decided she would not be that person. The following morning, she entered Richard's sitting room before sunrise. Snow pressed against the windows, turning the estate grounds white and still. Emma prepared his tea, arranged the newspaper, and placed his medication beside the cup exactly as Margaret had instructed. Richard arrived wearing a robe and leaning on his cane. You remembered everything. It was written on the schedule. A schedule can tell someone what to do. It cannot make them care whether it is done properly. Emma pulled out his chair. Richard noticed the exhaustion beneath her eyes but did not ask about it immediately. Instead, he pointed to the second chair. Sit with me. I'm working, and I'm asking you to sit. Emma remained standing. If Margaret sees me drinking tea with you, she may think I expect special treatment. Richard smiled. Margaret has worked for this family for 30 years. She thinks everyone expects special treatment. Emma almost laughed, but stopped herself. Richard swallowed his medication and studied her over the rim of his cup. Did someone frighten you last night? Emma's hand froze against the tray. No. You looked at your phone as if it contained bad news. It was a family matter. Family matters are often the ones that hurt the most. Emma lowered her gaze. She wanted to tell him everything. Richard's kindness made honesty feel possible, but he had already protected her once. She did not want to become another responsibility inside his home. I can handle it, she said. Richard did not press. He only nodded, though the concern remained in his eyes. Over the next several days, Emma learned the rhythm of the estate. The kitchen became active before dawn. Margaret inspected every room before breakfast. Ethan left for the city before most employees had finished their coffee and returned after dark with a briefcase full of reports. He rarely spoke to Emma. When he did, his questions were short. Did my father take his medication? Yes. Was the study locked? Yes. Who moved the blue file from the library table? I did. The window was open, and snow was blowing onto it. Ethan checked the file before responding. You should have called someone. There was no time. He looked at the dry pages and said nothing more. Emma was grateful for the distance. Ethan's suspicion made her uncomfortable, but it also made the rules clear. She worked, he observed. Neither of them pretended they trusted the other. Richard was different. He asked Emma about the books she dusted, the news stories she paused to read, and the business magazines she returned to his desk. One afternoon, he found her studying a chart in a Whitmore Foundation report. Do you understand that? He asked. Emma quickly closed the folder. I'm sorry. It was left open. That was not my question. She glanced at the chart again. The foundation is spending too much money reaching people who are unlikely to use the program. Richard raised an eyebrow. Explain. Emma pointed toward the advertising figures. The campaign is for job training, but most of the ads are appearing on business news sites. People visiting those sites probably already have stable work. The foundation should advertise through community colleges, shelters, public libraries, and local job centers. Richard sat across from her. What makes you so certain? Because people who need help do not always know where to look for it. I spent months searching for programs like this. Richard studied her for several seconds. Where did you study? Emma hesitated. University of Illinois at Chicago, Business Administration. You graduated? No, my father died during my final year. I went home to help my family and never returned. And now you clean rooms. There is nothing shameful about cleaning rooms. I did not say there was. But you were thinking I should be somewhere else. Richard's expression softened. I was thinking someone allowed your ability to go to waste. Emma returned the folder to the desk. Ability does not pay an overdue electric bill unless someone is willing to hire you. Neither of them noticed Ethan standing in the doorway. He had heard enough to understand that Emma had been reading a confidential foundation report. His first reaction was irritation. His second was curiosity. Show me what you saw, he said. Emma turned quickly. I wasn't trying to interfere. Then this is your chance not to. He placed the report on the desk and opened it to the campaign data. Emma explained the mismatch between the program and its audience. She expected Ethan to dismiss her after the first sentence. Instead, he questioned every assumption. How would you reach rural applicants? Partner with county libraries. What about people without reliable internet? Printed information in clinics, food banks, and public transit stations. How would you measure results? Track applications by referral source. Instead of only counting website visits, Ethan's face revealed nothing. When Emma finished, he closed the report. You noticed all of that while dusting the table? I noticed it because the chart didn't make sense. Richard leaned back, pleased. Ethan ignored him. You may return to work. Emma left the room uncertain whether she had impressed him or given him another reason to distrust her. The next morning, Whitmore Foundation staff received instructions to revise the campaign. No one told Emma. She discovered it only when Richard deliberately left the updated report on his desk. Applications had increased within 3 days. You were right, he said. Emma looked at the figures. The staff did the work. You found the problem. She smiled faintly. For the first time in years, someone had valued what she could think, not only what she could endure. Ethan continued watching her. He noticed that she never entered a room without knocking. She did not ask Richard for money. She did not mention the foundation report to other employees. When a silver serving spoon went missing, Emma helped Margaret search the entire dining wing before discovering it had been placed in the wrong cabinet by a senior maid. Emma could have allowed the older woman to be blamed. Instead, she quietly corrected the mistake. She was not behaving like someone trying to secure a wealthy family's favor. That should have eased Ethan's suspicions. Instead, it unsettled him. He understood ambition. He understood greed, flattery, and manipulation. Emma offered him none of those things, leaving him without a clear reason for why she had entered his life. At the end of her first week, Emma received her paycheck. Before she could deposit it, Tyler appeared outside the employee entrance. His coat was too thin for the cold, and his eyes were red from lack of sleep. You stopped answering. Emma moved away from the door so the other employees would not hear. You should not be here. I need the money. You always need money. This is serious. It was serious last month, too. Tyler grabbed her wrist. Harold already paid $10,000. Emma pulled free. That was your agreement, not mine. He wants dinner with you tonight. No. Mom says you owe us. I have spent 15 years paying for this family. I do not owe you my life. Tyler's expression changed. You think you're better than us because you work for billionaires? I think I'm tired. He stepped closer. Harold will not wait forever. Then tell him to stop waiting. A black car turned into the service drive. Ethan was seated in the back. Tyler immediately released Emma's arm. Ethan saw the movement, but could not hear their words. When the car stopped, Tyler hurried away without looking back. Who was that? Ethan asked. My brother. He appeared to be threatening you. He was asking for money. And did you give it to him? No. Ethan studied her face. You should report him if he returns. Emma almost smiled at the simplicity of his answer. Men like Ethan believed every danger could be handled by security, lawyers, or a phone call. They did not understand what it meant when the threat had raised you, fed you, and taught you to feel guilty for wanting freedom. I can manage my family, she said. So you keep saying. Ethan walked inside. That evening, the tension in the estate shifted for reasons that had nothing to do with Emma. 3 members of the Whitmore Global Board arrived for a private dinner. Emma was assigned to help serve. From the dining room, she heard fragments of their conversation. The company was preparing for a major international expansion. Investors were concerned about succession, public image, and Ethan's refusal to discuss marriage. One board member, Ethan's uncle Charles, spoke more bluntly than the others. You are 32 years old. You lead one of the largest private companies in the country, yet the public sees no stability beyond you. The company's balance sheet is stable, Ethan replied. Markets are not driven by numbers alone. They are driven by confidence. You want me to marry for investor confidence? I want you to consider the future. Ethan's jaw tightened. My private life is not a corporate asset. Charles leaned forward. You have rejected every introduction we arranged because you are still waiting for a girl who disappeared 15 years ago. A glass trembled slightly in Emma's hand. She remembered the photograph in Richard's library. Amelia. Ethan's voice became colder. Do not speak about her. You cannot build your life around a childhood promise. She saved my father, and the Lancaster family has spent millions searching for her without finding a trace." Richard interrupted before Ethan could answer. "That is enough." The board members changed the subject, but the damage remained in the room. Later, Emma carried the empty glasses into the kitchen. She now understood why Ethan guarded the silver-framed photograph and why he looked at kindness as though it belonged to a world he no longer trusted. It was not simply waiting for a lost woman. He was waiting for the last person connected to a time before his life became contracts, expectations, and suspicion. The next afternoon, Richard summoned Emma to the library. Ethan was already there. Neither man appeared comfortable. Richard gestured for Emma to sit. "I have been thinking about your situation." Emma looked from him to Ethan. "What situation?" "Your family, Harold Brooks. The pressure being placed on you." Emma's face grew hot. "I told you I could handle it, and I believe you would continue handling it until they destroyed every opportunity you had." Ethan stood near the window with his arms folded. "This was my father's idea," he said. "That is not reassuring." Richard ignored the remark. "The board wants Ethan to marry. Your family wants to force you into a marriage you do not want. There may be a solution that protects both of you." Emma stared at him. "No, you have not heard the proposal." "I can guess." Ethan turned from the window. "For once, we agree." Richard remained calm. "A legal marriage between you would stop Harold immediately. It would also satisfy the board long enough for Ethan to complete the company expansion." Emma rose from her chair. "You are talking about marriage as if it were a security arrangement." "That is exactly what it would be," Ethan said. His directness hurt more than it should have. Richard frowned at his son. "You could at least attempt to sound human." "I will not mislead her." Ethan looked at Emma. "If this happened, it would be temporary, private. No public announcement, no romantic expectations, and no claim on my personal assets." Emma's pride flared. "I did not ask for your money." "I know. Do you?" He paused. "I am beginning to." Richard explained that a confidential agreement could establish separate finances and a clear end date. Emma would continue working and maintain her independence. Ethan would provide legal protection if Diane or Harold attempted to force contact. Emma walked toward the window. Outside, the lake was covered in white. The entire proposal felt impossible, yet so had the idea of Richard Whitmore standing beside a fruit cart without his wallet. "What happens when you find Amelia?" she asked. The room became silent. Ethan answered without hesitation. "The marriage ends." Emma had expected those words, but hearing them made the arrangement feel colder. "You have been searching for her all this time." "Yes. And you still believe she is alive?" "I have to." Emma turned back toward Richard. "You want me to marry a man who has already promised his future to someone else?" "I want you to have the freedom to choose your own future," Richard said. "What happens after that will belong to both of you." Ethan did not share his father's hope. "This is a contract, nothing more." Emma asked for time. That night, she returned to the staff room and found 17 missed calls from Diane. A photograph arrived from Tyler. Harold was sitting in the Carter living room with a document on the table. Diane stood beside him, smiling. The message beneath it read, "He paid the rest. Come home tomorrow, or we will come get you." Emma read the words twice. She thought of her unfinished degree, the money Diane had taken, the years spent cleaning up Tyler's failures, and the certainty with which Harold believed payment gave him ownership of her. Then she thought of Ethan's proposal. It offered no love. It offered no promise of permanence, but it gave Emma something her family had never allowed her to possess. A choice. The next morning, she entered Ethan's study before she could lose her courage. He looked up from his desk. "I will agree," she said, "but I have conditions." Ethan slowly closed the file in front of him. Emma stood straighter. "I keep my own income. I continue working. I do not use your name to gain a position I have not earned. You do not control where I go, what I wear, or whom I speak to." "Agreed. And if you find Amelia, you tell me yourself. I will not learn that my marriage has ended from a newspaper." Something changed in Ethan's expression, though only for a moment. "You have my word." The civil ceremony took place 3 days later in a private office downtown. There were no flowers, no white dress, and no guests beyond Richard, an attorney, and 2 witnesses. Emma wore a simple navy dress borrowed from one of the maids. Ethan wore the same dark suit he used for board meetings. The clerk placed the documents between them. Ethan signed first. He did it quickly, as though approving another contract. Emma looked at his name beside the empty line reserved for hers. She understood exactly what the marriage was. She also understood what it was not. Still, her hand trembled when she signed. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore," the clerk said. Richard embraced Emma with tears in his eyes. Ethan only offered her a small velvet box. Inside was a plain gold ring. "You do not have to wear it at work," he said. Emma placed it on her finger anyway. That evening, she moved one suitcase into Ethan's penthouse. He showed her a bedroom at the opposite end of the hallway. "You will have privacy here. The staff has been told you are assisting my father and need to stay closer to the city. So no one knows we are married? No one outside this room, my father and the attorneys." Emma set her suitcase beside the bed. "And when Amelia returns?" Ethan's gaze moved toward the ring on her hand. "We end this cleanly." He walked away, leaving Emma alone in a beautiful room that did not feel like hers. For the first time, she was legally protected from Harold, Diane, and Tyler. Yet as she removed the ring and placed it beside the bed, Emma realized she had escaped one forced marriage by entering another marriage with an expiration date. She did not know which would hurt more, the day Ethan remained a stranger or the day he stopped being one. And across the city, Tyler had already discovered the truth. His sister had not married an ordinary man. She had married Ethan Whitmore. By morning, he would demand a price for keeping that secret. By sunrise, Tyler had already decided that Emma's marriage was not her escape. To him, it was simply a new source of money. Emma was preparing coffee in Ethan's penthouse when her phone rang. "I need $200,000, Tyler said without greeting her. Emma nearly dropped the spoon. "For what?" "I borrowed money from people who don't forgive late payments. You promised you had stopped gambling. I made a mistake. You make the same mistake every month." Tyler lowered his voice. "You live with one of the richest men in Chicago. Don't pretend you cannot help me." Emma glanced toward the hallway. Ethan's bedroom door was still closed. "My marriage is none of your business. Mom knows. Harold knows too." A cold feeling moved through her. "How did you find out?" "You disappeared, stopped answering our calls, and suddenly started staying in the city. It wasn't difficult." "I'm not giving you money. If I don't pay, they could kill me." Emma closed her eyes. Tyler always found the one sentence that made refusal feel like murder. But saving him had never changed him. "I'm done paying for your choices. You selfish." Emma ended the call. When she turned, Ethan was standing near the kitchen entrance. He had heard enough to understand that someone was demanding money. "Was that your brother?" "Yes." "How much?" "That is not your concern. You are my wife, only when it is useful to the board." The words came out sharper than Emma intended. Ethan's expression tightened, but he did not argue. "I can have security block his number and remove him if he comes near the building. I don't need you to solve everything." "No," Ethan said quietly. "You only need to stop pretending you can carry everything alone." He took his coffee and left before Emma could answer. At the Whitmore estate, Emma continued working as though nothing had changed. She wore her faded blue uniform, used the employee entrance, and ate lunch with the household staff. No one knew she had slept beneath the same roof as Ethan. She refused the driver assigned to the penthouse and took the train whenever the weather allowed. She bought groceries with her own money and kept every receipt in a small envelope. Ethan had expected questions about credit cards, clothes, or access to his accounts. Emma asked for none of them. Instead, she asked whether the laundry room schedule could be changed, so an older maid named Mrs. Dawson would not have to climb the stairs repeatedly with an injured knee. She spent evenings reviewing reports for Richard's foundation after finishing her household duties. She did not receive extra pay and never placed her name on the work. One night, Ethan returned after 11 and found her asleep at the dining table. Her head rested beside a stack of papers. A pencil remained between her fingers. Ethan picked up the top page. Emma had rewritten the schedule for a job training project, reducing administrative costs without cutting services. He should have woken her and reminded her that this was not her responsibility. Instead, he removed his coat and placed it over her shoulders. Emma stirred. "You're home. You are working too late. So are you. I own the company. And apparently exhaustion is one of the benefits." For a moment, Ethan almost smiled. Emma sat upright and noticed his coat. "You didn't have to do that. You were cold." The silence between them changed. It lasted only seconds, but it felt more dangerous than an argument. Emma looked away first. The next morning, Richard refused to take his medication. "It makes me dizzy," he complained. Emma sat across from him rather than placing the pills on the table and leaving. "Then we call your doctor and adjust the dose. I do not need another appointment. You also do not need another hospital stay." Richard frowned. "You sound like Ethan." "No, Ethan would order you. I'm asking you to stop frightening the people who love you." Richard studied her face, then swallowed the pills. Ethan had been standing outside the room. He watched Emma bring his father breakfast, wait until the medicine stayed down, and then quietly replace the heavy tray an older employee was carrying. She treated Richard with care, but not because he was wealthy. That frightened Ethan more than greed would have. Greed was easy to recognize. What Emma offered demanded trust. Days passed, and the distance between them slowly narrowed. They still slept in separate rooms. At work, they rarely spoke unless necessary. Yet Ethan began leaving foundation reports on the dining table because he wanted her opinion. Emma began preparing an extra cup of coffee because she knew he would return late. Neither admitted these small habits meant anything. Emma reminded herself that the marriage had an ending already written into it. Ethan still kept Amelia's photograph in his study. One afternoon, Diane called. Her voice was trembling. "Emma, Tyler has been hurt." Emma stood quickly. "What happened?" "The men he owes found him. He can barely walk. Call the police." "He refuses. Please come home. I cannot handle this alone." Emma hesitated. Diane had manipulated her before, but fear made the story sound real. "I'll come after work." "Come alone," Diane said. "Tyler is ashamed." Emma did not tell Ethan. She knew he would send security or try to stop her. That evening, she took a taxi to the small house where she had grown up. The living room lights were dim. Tyler was nowhere in sight. Diane met her at the door. "Where is he?" "In the back room." "Sit down first." "You look frozen. I want to see Tyler." Diane handed her a mug of tea. "He finally fell asleep. Drink this, then we'll talk." Emma noticed that Diane's voice was unusually gentle. For 1 second, suspicion warned her to put the cup down. Then Diane began crying. "I know I've been hard on you," she said. "I was scared. After your father died, I did not know how to keep this family together." Emma had waited years to hear something close to an apology. She took one sip. The room shifted. The mug slipped from her hand and shattered against the floor. "Mom!" Diane caught her before she fell. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "but Harold paid too much money for you to walk away." When Emma opened her eyes, her wrists were tied to a wooden chair. Her head throbbed. The room smelled of dust and old paint. Harold Brooks stood before her, removing his gloves. "You have no right to keep me here," Emma said. Harold smiled. "Your mother accepted my money. Your brother's debt is paid. I am not property. You were supposed to marry me. I never agreed." Harold leaned closer. "Do you really believe Ethan Whitmore sees you as his wife? You are a maid he married in secret because he needed a name on a document." Emma struggled against the rope. "He will come for me." Harold laughed. "First, he would have to notice you are missing." Across Chicago, Ethan entered the penthouse and saw Emma's untouched dinner on the counter. Her coat was gone, but her phone charger and work bag remained behind. He called her. No answer. Then he noticed a message glowing on the tablet connected to the home security system. It was from Tyler. "She should have paid when I asked." Ethan read it once and immediately called his security chief. Less than an hour later, footsteps thundered through Diane's hallway. Harold turned toward the locked door. "You dare touch my wife." The door crashed open, and for the first time, Ethan Whitmore was not fighting to protect a contract. He was fighting for Emma. The door crashed inward, and for one frozen second, no one moved. Harold stood beside Emma's chair with one hand near the rope around her wrist. Diane froze by the window. Tyler backed toward the hallway as Ethan's security team entered behind him. Ethan looked only at Emma. Her face was pale, and angry red marks crossed both wrists. She tried to stand, forgetting she was tied, and the chair scraped across the floor. "Step away from her," Ethan said. Harold straightened. "This is a private family matter. You drugged and restrained my wife." The word silenced the room. Until that moment, their marriage had existed only in a legal file and behind the locked doors of Ethan's penthouse. Hearing him claim her openly made Emma forget the pain in her wrists. Harold recovered first. "Her mother accepted my money. I paid her brother's debt. We had an agreement." "You made an agreement with people who had no right to speak for her." "She belongs with me. She belongs to no one." Harold reached toward Emma. Ethan caught his arm and forced it away. "Touch her again, and the police will be the least of your problems." Sirens sounded outside. Diane rushed forward. "You don't understand. We were trying to protect her." Emma stared at her. "You put something in my tea. You left us with nothing. Tyler was in danger. So you sold me. I raised you." The words had controlled Emma for years. This time, they only exposed the truth. "You fed a frightened child," Emma said. "Then you spent the rest of her life demanding payment." Police officers entered and separated everyone. Tyler blamed Harold. Harold blamed Diane. Diane called the kidnapping a misunderstanding. Ethan cut the ropes from Emma's wrists. "Can you walk?" "I think so." Her knees gave way the moment she stood. Ethan caught her and lifted her into his arms. Diane called after them. "Emma, tell them this was a family matter." Emma rested her head against Ethan's shoulder. For the first time, she did not look back. At the hospital, a doctor confirmed that Emma had been given a strong sedative. Her wrists were bruised, but she had no serious injuries. Ethan waited until he was allowed into the examination room. His knuckles were cut from breaking the door. "You found me quickly," Emma said. Tyler sent a message to the security system. He wanted money. He wanted leverage. Emma looked at his injured hand. "You should have that cleaned. You were tied to a chair, and you are worried about me? It is easier than thinking about what happened." The anger left his face. "I should have sent security with you. I did not tell you where I was going. I should have realized they would try something. You are not responsible for their choices." "No," Ethan said, "but I am responsible for protecting you." "Because I am part of the agreement?" He was silent for a moment. "When I entered that room, I was not thinking about the board." "What were you thinking about?" "That I might be too late." The doctor returned before Emma could answer. Back at the penthouse, Ethan dismissed the staff and placed ice around Emma's wrists himself. His movements were careful, almost uncertain. "You can stop looking at me as though I might break," Emma said. "I know you are not fragile." His answer came quickly, as though he had already learned that strength and pain could exist together. Emma stared at the untouched tea before her. "Diane is not my biological mother." Ethan looked up. "She and her husband took me in when I was 11. I woke in a small hospital after an accident. I had a head injury and could not remember my family, my last name, or where I lived." "Were you legally adopted?" Diane said a private attorney handled it. After her husband died, she claimed the records had been destroyed in a flood. "That does not make sense. Very little about my childhood does." Ethan's expression sharpened with the need to investigate. "Please don't," Emma said. "Not yet. I cannot survive another truth tonight." For once, he did not try to solve the problem. "All right, not tonight." For several days, Ethan worked from home. He told himself it was because the police needed statements, and Harold's attorneys were already calling the kidnapping a domestic dispute. But he also listened for Emma's door at night. When she woke from nightmares, she found the hallway light on. Ethan never admitted he had left it there. Richard arrived the next morning and held Emma tightly. "You gave me somewhere safe when I had nowhere else," she told him. Richard looked toward Ethan. "My son did more than open a door this time." Ethan changed the subject. But Emma saw the concern beneath his usual control. Restraining orders were filed against Diane, Tyler, and Harold. Security was instructed never to allow them near the estate or penthouse. When Emma returned to work, Ethan began driving her himself. The first morning, she opened the rear passenger door. "What are you doing?" he asked from the driver's seat. "Sitting in the back. I am not your chauffeur. You are my employer. Today I am your husband." Emma closed the rear door and sat beside him. Neither spoke much, yet the silence no longer felt hostile. At Richard's request, Emma began assisting the Whitmore Foundation. She still helped the household staff, but her main duties now involved community programs and job training. "I will not accept a position because I married you," she told Ethan. "You are getting it because you already proved you can do the work." Emma agreed only after learning that the foundation genuinely needed help. The new role gave her a sense of purpose she had not felt since leaving college. She visited shelters, listened to women returning to work after abuse, and redesigned a training program around what they actually needed. Ethan attended one meeting without warning. He watched Emma speak to the women without making promises she could not keep. She listened before suggesting solutions. Outside the community center, he said, "You were good in there. That sounded painful. I am trying to improve." At compliments? At admitting when someone else is right. Emma smiled. Ethan stared a moment too long, and both of them noticed. That night, they ate together at the penthouse without Richard arranging it. Ethan spoke about losing his mother and how Richard had raised him. Then he spoke about Amelia. "She was fearless," he said. "She argued with adults and once punched a boy for insulting my father. She sounds exhausting." "She was, but you loved her." Ethan looked toward the dark window. "I promised I would find her. I also promised that when we were old enough, I would marry her." The warmth of the evening disappeared. Emma stood and carried her plate away. "Our arrangement was always clear," she said. Ethan watched her leave, troubled by how much he wanted her to stay. 2 weeks later, the Lancaster family held its annual winter charity gala. The event supported organizations searching for missing children. Ethan asked Emma to accompany him. "As what?" she asked. "My guest. Your employee or your wife? The marriage is still private. Then I should remain here." He understood the insult beneath his invitation. He wanted her beside him but was unwilling to give her a name there. Ethan attended alone. Near the end of the gala, William Lancaster stepped onto the stage with tears in his eyes. "For 15 years, we prayed for one answer. Tonight, we finally have it." A young woman in a silver gown entered. She had light hair, a delicate face, and a small scar near her temple. "This is our daughter," William announced. "Amelia Lancaster has come home." The woman looked directly at Ethan. "You still look too serious." It was a phrase Amelia had used when they were children. "Amelia," Ethan whispered. She called him by the childhood nickname no one else had used in 15 years. The Lancasters announced that a DNA test had confirmed her identity. She had grown up under the name Vanessa Reed after losing much of her memory in an accident. Across Chicago, Emma watched the reunion on television. Her hand moved toward her wedding ring. She had always known this day might arrive. Knowing did not make it hurt less. Ethan returned after midnight. "She is alive," he said. "I saw. The DNA test confirmed it. Then you found the woman you were waiting for." Ethan looked at Emma as though he had only just remembered what that meant for their marriage. "I need time to understand this." "Of course. You do not have to pretend this changes nothing." "I am not pretending." Emma walked toward her room before he could see her tears. In the days that followed, Vanessa became the center of national attention. The media called her and Ethan childhood soulmates, reunited by fate. Ethan met with her several times, hoping her memories would return. At home, he missed dinners and forgot conversations. He was not deliberately cruel, but absence could wound as deeply as words. Richard remained suspicious. "A blood test can identify a family," he told Emma. "It cannot prove a person's heart." Emma refused to hope. Vanessa visited the Whitmore estate on a snowy afternoon. She entered in an ivory coat and studied the mansion as if imagining it already belonged to her. She found Emma arranging flowers while still wearing her blue maid's uniform. "Who is she?" Vanessa asked. "My foundation assistant?" Richard answered. She looks like a maid. I was hired as one, Emma said. Vanessa smiled coldly. How ambitious. During tea, Vanessa deliberately knocked over a glass of red wine. It spread across the carpet and touched her white shoe. Clean it, she ordered. A maid moved forward, but Vanessa stopped her and pointed at Emma. Emma blotted the carpet, then stood. Vanessa extended her foot. You missed my shoe. I will bring you something to clean it. You already have a cloth. The room became silent. Vanessa expected Emma to kneel. Emma placed the cloth on the table. I clean rooms, Miss Reed. I do not kneel to people. Ethan entered as Vanessa's face hardened. What happened? She was rude to me, Vanessa said, moving close to him. Emma waited for Ethan to ask what Vanessa had done. Instead, he looked between them. This does not need to become a scene. She tried to humiliate me, Emma said. Emma, please. My father's guests should be treated with respect. He had not raised his voice, but his words were enough. He had chosen peace with Vanessa over truth with Emma. Emma nodded once. Of course, Mr. Whitmore. That night, she stood alone in her bedroom and removed her wedding ring. Ethan had rescued her from a man who believed money gave him the right to own her. Yet now he was reminding her that his loyalty still belonged to a woman from his past. Emma placed the ring on the table. She did not know that Vanessa had paid the doctor who signed the DNA report. And she did not know that one forgotten detail in Richard's oldest photograph could prove that the woman Ethan had waited 15 years to find was standing much closer than he realized. By morning, the ring was still on the table. Emma had spent the night waiting for anger to fade into something easier to carry. It never did. What remained was a quiet certainty. If she stayed, she would slowly become invisible inside a marriage that had never truly belonged to her. She packed only what she had brought into Ethan's penthouse. Her clothes fit into one suitcase. The books Richard had given her went into a small box. She left the credit card Ethan had never seen her use inside the top drawer. Then she wrote a letter. She thanked Ethan for protecting her from Harold and for giving her a place where she had once felt safe. She did not accuse him of loving Amelia. He had never hidden that truth. Instead, Emma admitted that she had broken the only rule that mattered. She had fallen in love with him. Emma placed the letter beneath the ring and left before sunrise. Her first stop was the Whitmore estate. Richard was having breakfast when she entered his sitting room without her uniform. One look at her suitcase told him everything. You are leaving him. I'm leaving the arrangement. Richard pushed his tea aside. Ethan made a mistake yesterday. This is not about one afternoon. He cares about you. He protects me when I am in danger. That is not the same as choosing me. Richard came around the table. He has spent 15 years believing his future belonged to Amelia. You reached him in a few months. Give him time to understand that. Every day I stay gives me another reason to hope. Every time he looks at her, I remember I was only supposed to fill an empty space. You were never a replacement to me. Emma hugged him. You were the first person who gave me kindness without asking for payment. Richard offered her money and a permanent position at the foundation. Emma refused both. If I take anything now, Ethan may believe I stayed because of what your family could give me. You earned more than you accepted. Then let me earn the next part of my life, too. Richard did not stop her. He only made her promise to call. Emma rented a small studio above a bakery on Chicago's west side. The heating pipes rattled, the windows leaked cold air, and the kitchen barely fit one person. But the key belonged to her. She found work at Harbor House, a nonprofit helping women escape financial abuse and forced relationships. The salary was modest, yet the work mattered. No one there knew she was legally married to Ethan Whitmore. For the first time, she was simply Emma Carter. The divorce papers were filed 1 week later. She requested no property, settlement, or support. Her attorney asked whether she understood how much money she could claim. I don't want to be paid for leaving, Emma said. At the penthouse, Ethan found her room empty after returning from dinner with the Lancasters. He saw the bare closet first, then the ring. He read Emma's letter standing beside the bed. The sentence about loving him forced him to sit down. He had seen her affection in the coffee, waiting after late meetings, and in the way she cared for Richard, but he had never allowed himself to name it. Now the rooms felt wrong without her. The following morning, Ethan went to the estate expecting to find Emma working beside Richard. When Margaret told him she had resigned, he walked directly into his father's sitting room. "You let her leave. She is not a prisoner. She filed for divorce. You told her the marriage would end when Amelia returned. I said I needed time. And while you were taking it, you allowed another woman to humiliate your wife in her own home." Ethan flinched. "I did not know Vanessa would behave that way." "You did know, Emma. You knew she would never claim a place where she was not openly wanted." Ethan placed the ring on the table. "She left everything. That surprises you because you still do not understand her." Ethan convinced himself Emma needed space and that Amelia's return had to be resolved first. It was a decision he would soon regret. Vanessa welcomed Emma's disappearance. She spent more time at the Whitmore estate, criticizing the staff and discussing changes no one had asked her to make. One afternoon, a housekeeper brought white roses after misunderstanding Vanessa's request for jasmine. "Are you deaf?" Vanessa snapped, lifting the vase. Ethan caught her wrist. "That is enough. She does not listen. She made a mistake." "You defended the maid before, too." The comparison stopped him. Emma would have corrected the error without making anyone feel small. Vanessa noticed his expression. "You are thinking about her. I am thinking about how you treat people when you believe they cannot help you. I lost 15 years of my life. Perhaps I am still learning how to live normally." The explanation might have satisfied him earlier. Now it sounded rehearsed. Her spending also became impossible to ignore. Vanessa bought jewelry, clothes, and a sports car using an account from the Lancaster family. She postponed every meeting about their foundation and showed no interest in Lancaster Holdings. Whenever William or Elizabeth asked about the past, she claimed headaches. Ethan tried to test a memory no newspaper could provide. He showed her a photograph of them beside a stone fountain. "What happened after this?" "We went inside for dinner." "No, you pushed me into the fountain because I would not give you my toy sailboat." Vanessa laughed too loudly. "Some memories are still missing." He asked about a scar Amelia had received climbing an old greenhouse wall. Vanessa pointed to the mark near her temple. Ethan shook his head. The greenhouse scar was behind her right ear. "Maybe you remember it incorrectly." He said nothing, but suspicion had finally found a place to grow. At Harbor House, Emma worked until exhaustion left little room for longing. One evening, Richard arrived with coffee and told her Ethan was questioning Vanessa. Emma refused to build hope around his uncertainty. "If he is unhappy, he must decide what that means. You still love him. That does not mean I should return to a man who is unsure whether he wants me." As Emma tucked her hair behind her ear, Richard noticed a thin, curved scar. "Where did you get that?" "I don't know. It was there when I woke after the accident." Richard stared at her. Amelia had a scar in the same place. Emma stepped back. "That proves nothing." "No, but it is not the first similarity." He remembered her dislike of cinnamon and the way she tapped twice on a table before a difficult decision. "Please do not turn me into another version of the woman Ethan wants," Emma said. "I am trying to discover who you were before Diane found you." "I know who I am now." Richard promised not to pressure her, but he left with a question he could no longer ignore. The next day, he opened a locked cabinet containing records from the night Amelia disappeared. There were hospital receipts, police reports, and a faded photograph of Richard lying unconscious after the accident. A young volunteer stood partly hidden beside the bed. Her face was turned away, but behind her right ear was a small curved scar. Richard called Ethan. "You need to see this." Ethan arrived with Noah Bennett, his closest friend and head of corporate security. Richard showed them the photograph and explained Emma's memory loss. Noah examined the back. "This was taken at St. Catherine's Hospital. That hospital closed 12 years ago," Ethan said. "The records may still exist in county archives." Ethan looked at the blurred girl. If Emma was Amelia, then the woman he had searched for had lived beside him, worked in his home, and loved him while he remained loyal to a memory. "Find every surviving record," he told Noah. At the same time, Ethan ordered an investigation into Vanessa's DNA result. The report appeared official, but one sample number did not match the collection form. The nurse listed as a witness had left the hospital before the test was performed. Noah traced the test to Dr. Marcus Hale. Financial records showed Vanessa had transferred $50,000 to a company linked to him 3 days before the positive result was uploaded. Ethan arranged a private meeting. Dr. Hale denied everything until Noah placed the bank transfers, altered forms, and deleted messages on the table. "You forged a test involving a missing woman," Ethan said. "Tell me the truth, or the medical board and federal investigators receive every page." The doctor collapsed under the pressure. "Vanessa approached me before the Lancasters met her. She had family information and a sample from one of their relatives. I replaced her sample and created the match." "She is not Amelia?" "No." Ethan felt no heartbreak, only shame. The woman he thought he had waited for was a fraud, while the woman he truly missed had already asked him to let her go. He took the confession to the Lancaster estate that evening. William read it twice before facing Vanessa. "Tell me this is not true." Her frightened expression vanished. "You wanted Amelia so badly that none of you asked whether I was really her." Elizabeth began to cry. "We loved you. You loved a name." Police officers were called, but Vanessa fled through the rear entrance before they arrived. By the time security searched the grounds, her car was gone. Before midnight, Noah located an archived blood donation record from St. Catherine's Hospital. The unidentified girl admitted after the accident had donated blood to Richard. Years later, a social worker had added the name under which she was living: Emma Carter. The age, rare blood type, and scar all matched Amelia. Ethan stared at the document. "Emma saved my father." Richard nodded. "And she may be the daughter the Lancasters never stopped searching for." Ethan grabbed his keys. "I am going to her." His phone rang before he reached the door. The number was blocked. When he answered, Vanessa's voice came through the speaker. "If you want your wife alive, transfer $50 million to the account I send you." A muffled sound came from the background. Then Emma's voice, weak but unmistakable. "Ethan, don't." The line went dead. He had finally discovered that Emma might be Amelia. But someone had reached her before he could tell her the truth. The call had ended, but Emma's broken warning still echoed through the room. Ethan stared at the dark screen for half a second before turning to Noah. "Proceed. I already started. Call the police. Mobilize every security team we have." Richard stepped forward. "I'm coming with you." "No, you stay here. I lost that child once while I was lying unconscious in a hospital. I will not sit safely at home while someone takes her again." Ethan wanted to argue, but Richard's expression left no room for it. Noah connected the phone to a tracking system. The call had been routed through several temporary towers, but one signal had lasted long enough to identify an industrial district outside Chicago. "It is not an exact location," Noah said. "We have a 6-mile radius, then search every building." Police units were notified, but Ethan could not wait for a perfect plan. Every minute gave Vanessa more time to hurt Emma. Across the city, Emma opened her eyes on the cold floor of an abandoned warehouse. Her hands were tied behind her back. A rope around her ankles prevented her from standing. One side of her face burned where someone had struck her. Vanessa paced nearby in an expensive coat, looking less like a frightened fugitive than a woman furious that the world had refused to give her what she wanted. Diane sat at an old metal table counting stacks of cash. Tyler stood near the door, repeatedly checking the windows. "This was supposed to be simple," he muttered. "We take the money and leave." Vanessa turned on him. "You will leave when I say you can. You said no one would get hurt. I said whatever was necessary to make you useful." Emma forced herself upright against a wooden support beam. "How did you find me?" Diane did not look up. "You still answer when someone tells you Tyler is in danger." Emma's stomach tightened. The message had arrived while she was leaving Harbor House. Diane claimed Tyler had been beaten and abandoned near an old storage facility. Emma had known she should call the police. Instead, the part of her trained to rescue everyone had taken control. Vanessa smiled. "You are predictable, Emma. That is why people have used you your entire life." "What do you want?" "What I was promised." "No one promised you, Ethan." "He searched for Amelia for 15 years. I became Amelia. The name, the family, and Ethan were supposed to be mine. You forged a test. I gave grieving people what they wanted. You used their pain. And they welcomed me because I looked right, spoke correctly, and told them the story they needed to hear. Vanessa knelt in front of Emma. Then you appeared, a housemaid with no family, no money, and no memory. Somehow, Ethan looked at you in a way he never looked at me. He was trying to believe you were someone else. That should have been enough. Vanessa's calm expression cracked. But even while he thought I was Amelia, he missed you. Emma refused to show fear. If Ethan pays you, the police will still find you. This is not only about money. Vanessa glanced toward the men waiting near the far wall. Emma understood the threat in her expression. Diane finally stopped counting. You said she would not be seriously harmed. Vanessa laughed. You drugged your own daughter and sold her to Harold. Do not pretend you developed a conscience tonight. She is not my daughter. The words struck Emma harder than the blow to her face. She turned toward Diane. What did you say? Diane avoided her eyes. I was never your real mother. Tyler looked uncomfortable, as though he had heard the truth before but preferred not to acknowledge it. Emma struggled against the ropes. You told me my parents died. I told you what made things easier. What happened to me? Diane stood and folded her arms. 15 years ago, my husband and I were driving home during a storm. We saw a girl near Street Catherine's hospital. You were injured and confused. You could not remember your name, your address, or your parents. You should have taken me to the police. We did not want questions. Why? Diane's face hardened. My husband had gambling debts. He was driving with a suspended license. He thought the police would arrest him. So you took me home? At first, it was supposed to be temporary. We expected someone to find you, but no one came. That is a lie. The Lancasters searched everywhere. We did not know who you were. You never tried to find out. Diane remained silent. Emma felt years of unanswered questions collapsing into one unbearable truth. Her childhood documents had disappeared because they had never existed. The adoption story was false. The flood that supposedly destroyed the records had been another lie. Dad loved me, Emma whispered. Diane's expression briefly softened. My husband did. He wanted to report everything and make the adoption legal. But by then, you had lived with us for years. He was afraid we would lose you. And after he died? You were old enough to work. Emma stared at the woman she had spent half her life trying to please. That is why nothing I did was ever enough. Tyler was my son. He came first. So you knew Harold planned to imprison me. He paid Tyler's debt. And now you helped Vanessa abduct me. She offered enough money for us to leave the state. Emma's voice shook, but she did not cry. You never loved me. Diane looked away. You were never mine to love. For years, Emma had believed there was something wrong with her. She had worked harder, surrendered more, and accepted every insult because she thought love could be earned through sacrifice. Now she understood. Diane had not withheld love because Emma failed. Diane had simply decided Emma was useful. Vanessa checked her phone. Enough family therapy. Ethan has 10 minutes to transfer the money. Emma looked directly at her. He will not give you what you want. He will if he believes you might die. You do not know him. Vanessa smiled. Neither did you. You married a man who promised to leave you for a woman he remembered from childhood. Emma's heart tightened, but she answered calmly. And he still chose to search for me after I walked away. The smile vanished from Vanessa's face. She struck Emma. Tyler stepped forward. That was not part of the plan. Vanessa turned the gun toward him. Neither was your opinion. Diane moved behind Tyler. We should leave now. Take whatever money we have and go. No one is leaving until Ethan understands what happens when he rejects me. While Vanessa argued with them, Emma felt along the rope around her wrists. One broken piece of metal protruded from the beam behind her. She began moving the knot against it. The edge cut into her skin, but the rope slowly weakened. Outside, Ethan's convoy reached the industrial district. Noah's team divided the area using the signal map. Police searched the northern warehouses while private security moved south. Richard sat in the second vehicle, gripping the old hospital photograph. What if we are wrong? Ethan asked quietly. About the location? About Emma being Amelia. Richard looked at him. Would that change why you are searching for her? No. Then you already know what matters. Noah's voice came through the radio. We found the vehicle used to take her. Warehouse 14. Ethan was out of the car before it fully stopped. Police ordered him to wait, but he refused. Noah and 2 officers followed as they approached the building through a side entrance. Inside, Emma finally tore one hand free. She worked quickly on the rope around her ankles. Vanessa saw the movement. What are you doing? Emma kicked the chair toward her and ran. A gunshot exploded through the warehouse. The bullet struck a metal shelf beside Emma, sending tools crashing to the floor. Diane screamed. Tyler dropped behind the table. Emma reaching out here, but Vanessa approached with the gun raised. You took everything from me. I did not take your identity. You stole mine. You do not even remember being Amelia. I remember who I became without the name. Vanessa's hand trembled. And Ethan still wants you. Emma stood against the locked door. If he does, it is because I never had to pretend to be someone else. Vanessa aimed at her chest. Before she could fire, Ethan struck her from the side. The gun slid across the concrete. Ethan shielded Emma with his body, while Noah disarmed Vanessa. Police rushed into the warehouse and arrested the remaining men. Tyler tried to escape through a rear door, but was caught outside. Diane dropped to her knees. Emma, tell them I helped raise you. Emma looked at her with quiet disbelief. You raised me to believe I owed you everything. I gave you a home. You sold me twice. Officers pulled Diane to her feet. Please, she cried. You cannot let them take me. I am your mother. Emma did not look away. No, you finally told me the truth. Diane continued screaming as police led her outside. Ethan untied the remaining rope and pulled Emma into his arms. For several seconds, neither spoke. You came, she whispered. I will always come. You did not know where I was. I would have searched every building in Illinois. Emma leaned back enough to look at him. Did you find out about Vanessa? The test was forged. And Amelia? Ethan hesitated. There is evidence that you may be her. Emma's body became still. You found proof? Not enough yet. A blood donation record, your age, the accident, and the scar all match. Vanessa laughed bitterly as officers brought her past them. Tell her the rest, Ethan. Tell her you only came because she might be the girl you promised to marry. Ethan faced Emma. I came before I knew whether the records were conclusive. But you knew it was possible. Yes. Emma stepped away from his arms. Then answer one question. If the DNA test says I am not Amelia, what happens? Ethan did not hesitate. I still love Emma Carter. The warehouse seemed to fall silent around them. I spent years loving a memory because it could not disappoint me, he continued. You were real. You challenged me, left me, and forced me to see what I had become. Losing you hurt more than losing the idea of Amelia. Emma's eyes filled with tears. You chose Vanessa when you thought she was Amelia. I chose the past because I was afraid of what I felt for you. That does not erase what happened. I know. He did not ask for forgiveness. He only removed his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. At the hospital, doctors treated Emma's cuts and bruises. Ethan remained outside the room while police took her statement. Richard arrived as soon as she was cleared for visitors. The moment Emma saw him, the strength she had maintained disappeared. Richard held her as she cried. I don't know who I am, she said. You are the woman who stopped in a snowstorm to help an old man when no one else would. What if I really am Amelia? Then Amelia grew into Emma. One truth does not erase the other. William and Elizabeth Lancaster arrived shortly afterward. They stopped at the doorway, afraid to approach too quickly. Elizabeth covered her mouth when she saw the scar behind Emma's ear. I remember that scar, she whispered. She fell from the greenhouse wall. She refused to cry until Ethan came running. Emma felt nothing she could identify as memory. I'm sorry. William shook his head. You have nothing to apologize for. A nurse collected new samples from Emma and the Lancasters. The hospital used an independent laboratory under police supervision. The waiting lasted through the night. Emma sat beside the window, while snow fell beyond the glass. Ethan remained in the hallway, respecting the distance she had requested. Near dawn, the doctor entered carrying a sealed folder. Everyone stood. The results confirm a biological parent-child relationship between Miss Emma Carter and Mr. and Mrs. Lancaster. Elizabeth began to sob. William closed his eyes, as if a prayer he had repeated for 15 years had finally been answered. The doctor continued, Emma Carter is Amelia Grace Lancaster. Emma looked at the people calling her their daughter, then at Ethan, standing silently beyond the doorway. She had spent most of her life believing she was an unwanted burden. Now she was being told that a family had never stopped searching for her. But finding the truth was only the beginning, because the next morning, Emma would have to enter the Lancaster home as their lost heiress and decide whether she could become Amelia without losing the woman she had fought so hard to become. The DNA results gave Emma a family before they gave her a sense of belonging. The next morning, William and Elizabeth Lancaster brought her to the estate where she had spent the first 11 years of her life. The mansion stood behind iron gates and snow-covered trees, yet Emma felt more nervous entering it than she had on her first day at Whitmore Estate. Elizabeth reached for her hand but stopped. You do not have to call us Mom and Dad, she said. Not until it feels right. Inside, family photographs covered the walls. In almost every one, a pale-haired girl smiled between William and Elizabeth. Several showed her beside a younger Ethan, both of them muddy and laughing. Emma recognized her own eyes, but the child still felt like a stranger. Elizabeth opened a bedroom preserved for 15 years. The wallpaper had faded, but the books, stuffed animals, and music box remained untouched. We kept thinking you might come home and ask why we moved something, Elizabeth said. Emma opened a music box. A soft melody filled the room. For 1 second, she saw sunlight through greenhouse glass and heard a boy calling her name. The image vanished immediately. I remembered something. Elizabeth began to cry, but William gently stopped her from rushing forward. Do not force it, he told Emma. We waited 15 years. We can wait for every memory that returns. Their patience moved Emma more than any demand for recognition could have. At lunch, they told her stories without expecting her to become Amelia overnight. She learned that she had rescued injured birds, hated cinnamon, and argued whenever someone weaker was treated unfairly. Richard smiled. So you were always the girl who stepped between a bully and someone who could not defend themselves. Emma took his hand. You treated me like family before either of us knew why. You found me first, Richard replied. Later, William showed Emma documents naming her the legal heir to Lancaster Holdings and several family trusts. Emma closed the folder. I am not qualified to run a corporation because a DNA test restored my last name. Then learn at your own pace, William said. I want to continue working with women controlled by their families. Then we will support you, not as a gift. I want to build something useful and be responsible for it. William smiled with quiet pride. That sounds like my daughter. Emma did not move into the Lancaster mansion. She kept her small apartment, continued working at Harbor House, and visited her parents gradually. Finding her family did not mean abandoning the woman she had become while surviving without them. She also made a decision about her name. I was born Amelia Grace Lancaster, she said, but I fought to become Emma Carter. I cannot erase either life. Elizabeth nodded. Then keep both. From that day forward, she introduced herself as Emma Amelia Lancaster. Ethan did not pressure her to return. He signed the divorce papers without demanding money, time, or another private meeting. Then he faced the press and admitted that their marriage had begun as an arrangement. Reporters expected him to blame Vanessa for everything. He refused. The fraud explains why I was deceived, Ethan said. It does not excuse the way I failed my wife. I hid our marriage, doubted her intentions, and remained silent when she deserved my support. Emma watched the interview from her apartment. For once, Ethan was not using power or silence to protect himself. He allowed the world to see his failure without asking her to forgive him. A week later, a package arrived. Inside was the plain gold wedding ring she had left behind, and a short note. This belongs to you. What happens next must be your choice. The Lancaster family planned a gala to welcome their daughter home. Emma agreed only after the event was turned into a fundraiser for women escaping forced marriages and financial abuse. That night, she wore a simple midnight blue gown. Hidden inside her sleeve was the silver name tag from her old maid's uniform. She wanted to remember the woman who had arrived at Whitmore Estate with wet shoes, empty pockets, and no idea that anyone had ever searched for her. Before hundreds of guests, William introduced her as the rightful heir to Lancaster Holdings. Emma stepped to the microphone. "I may have been born Amelia Lancaster, but I grew up as Emma Carter. Wealth did not give me courage, and a famous name did not teach me kindness. Those qualities were built during the years when I believed I had nothing." The ballroom became silent. I will never be ashamed that I worked as a maid. Honest work did not make me invisible. The people who looked down on me simply refused to see. Applause filled the room. Ethan stood near the back beside Richard. He had not approached Emma all evening. When the music began, guests gathered around her, but Emma kept finding Ethan's eyes across the ballroom. Richard leaned toward his son. "You spent 15 years searching for Amelia. Are you going to stand here and lose Emma? I have no right to ask her for anything." "Then do not ask because you have a right. Ask because she has the right to answer." Ethan crossed the ballroom. The guests slowly stepped aside as he stopped before Emma. In his hand was the gold ring. "I thought you returned that to me," she said. "I returned the ring from our first marriage." He lowered himself onto one knee. Cameras turned toward them, and the room fell silent. But Ethan was not looking at an heiress or a girl from his childhood. He was looking at the maid who had once spent her last dollar to protect his father. And this time, no contract could protect either of them from her answer. The ballroom waited for Emma's answer, but Ethan did not reach for her hand or try to use the watching crowd to pressure her. He remained on one knee and held the ring between them. "The first time I married you, I offered rules, separate rooms, and an ending," he said. "I treated love like another risk I could control." Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she remained silent. "I spent 15 years searching for Amelia because I believed keeping that promise made me loyal. The truth is, loving a memory was easier than loving a real person. A memory could never challenge me, leave me, or reveal how afraid I was." Ethan glanced at the ring. "When Vanessa returned with Amelia's name, I chose the past because I was too frightened to admit that my future was already standing beside me." Emma's voice was quiet. "How do I know this is not guilt?" "You don't. Not yet." His honest answer surprised her. "I cannot erase the day I failed to defend you. I cannot undo the nights you felt like a temporary guest in your own marriage. All I can do is spend the rest of my life proving that I finally understand what I almost lost." Ethan looked directly into her eyes. "I am not asking Amelia Lancaster, the heiress I promised to marry as a child. I am asking Emma, the woman who helped my father when she had nothing, who worked beside people instead of above them, and who loved me when I had done nothing to deserve it." Richard wiped tears from his eyes. Ethan continued, "Our divorce is complete. The contract is finished. You owe me nothing. If you say no, I will respect your answer and still be grateful that you taught me how to see people clearly." He lifted the ring slightly. "But if there is still a place for me in the life you are building, will you marry me again this time, because we both choose it?" Emma looked around the ballroom. Her biological parents were watching with hope, but neither urged her to answer. Richard smiled gently. The cameras no longer mattered. For most of her life, other people had decided what she owed, whom she should save, and what sacrifices she was expected to make. This decision belonged only to her. Emma looked back at Ethan. "I do not want another marriage hidden behind closed doors. It will not be hidden. I will continue my work. I would never ask you to stop, and when you are wrong, I will tell you." A faint smile appeared on his face. "I am counting on it." Emma finally extended her hand. "Yes." The ballroom erupted in applause as Ethan placed the ring on her finger. He stood, but instead of kissing her immediately, he waited. Emma closed the distance herself. For the first time, there was no agreement forcing them together, and no secret requiring them to stay apart. Their second wedding took place 4 months later in the winter garden at the Lancaster estate. White lights hung from the bare trees while snow rested along the stone paths. Emma chose a simple ivory gown. William walked beside her on one side, and Richard walked on the other. Every employee from the Whitmore estate received an invitation as an honored guest. Margaret sat in the front row beside the kitchen staff and the maids who had once worked alongside Emma. When Ethan saw her approaching, he did not see a lost heiress returning to the life she should have had. He saw the woman who had created a life after everything familiar had been taken from her. Their vows contained no promises of perfection. Ethan promised to listen before judging, to stand beside Emma publicly and privately, and never again allow fear of the past to decide their future. Emma promised honesty, partnership, and love freely given, rather than demanded. Richard smiled as they exchanged rings. "This," he whispered, "is the marriage I prayed for." Vanessa was later convicted of identity fraud, kidnapping, and conspiracy. The doctor who forged the DNA test lost his medical license and received a prison sentence. Harold Brooks was convicted for his role in Emma's earlier kidnapping. Diane and Tyler also faced charges. Tyler eventually entered a rehabilitation program for gambling addiction, but Emma made it clear that forgiveness would not mean returning to the life where she was responsible for saving him. She gave neither of them money. For the first time, she understood that protecting herself was not cruelty. Emma used part of her inheritance to create the Carter Lancaster Foundation, supporting women escaping forced marriages, financial control, and abusive households. She also created scholarships for domestic workers who wanted to finish their education. Emma later returned to college and completed the degree she had abandoned years earlier. She joined the Lancaster board only after learning the business from the ground up. She never allowed anyone to hide her past as a maid. "It was honest work," she told a reporter. "The uniform never made me small. It only revealed which people were too blind to recognize my worth." 1 year after their wedding, Emma and Ethan returned to the same fruit stand where she had first met Richard. The owner had changed, but the street remained crowded and cold. Richard stood between them, holding a bag of apples. "You know," he said, "if I had remembered my wallet that morning, none of this might have happened." Emma smiled. "You would have found another way to interfere in Ethan's life. I prefer to call it guidance." Ethan took Emma's hand. "I searched for you for 15 years. You met me and still failed to recognize me. I was an idiot. You were, but I see you now." Emma looked at the man who had once treated her like a suspicious stranger, and later learned to love her without the protection of a childhood promise. "That is all I ever wanted." Some people believed Emma's happy ending began when she discovered she was an heiress. It did not. It began on the day she stood in the snow with almost nothing and chose kindness without expecting a reward. Money restored her inheritance. A DNA test restored her name. But courage, dignity, and compassion had always belonged to her. If Emma's story reminded you that kindness can change a life, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more stories like this one. If this story was meaningful to you, press 1 inch the comments. If it was not, press 0 and tell us what could have made it better. And remember, the right person will never love you for the name you carry, the money you inherit, or the position you hold. They will love the person you choose to become when no one is watching.